Thank you very much for watching. I didn't realise that all three people here in Canberra are all graduates of the University of Western Sydney. They're probably proud of one of us at any particular time. Ed Husick, Fiona Scott in the studio, Janine Perrott and Ross Cameron. All right, Ed, we've given you a bit of a tough time the first couple of minutes, so feel free to puff your chest out and have a look at the Newspoll numbers. This was one heck of a flip. In the past couple of weeks, we had thought that there was a movement on, that the Royal Commission and ABC bashing was starting to work, but primary, 4-point jump for the Labor Party. Where it comes from, obviously 2% from the Libs and then 2% from Greens and others. Also worth having a look at is in two-party preferred. We're now into 54-46 territory. That basically would be the same result the other way around should the election be run, but it ain't going to be run for a couple of years. Sorry to break the news to you. In terms of preferred Prime Minister, that's always interesting to look at. And then the personal, which is very close, the personal numbers of approval and disapproval. Well, to be honest, Tony Abbott had negative numbers as disapproval numbers when he was opposition leader. You can't read too much into all of that. But Janine, I give you the free kick at the start. What is going on here? We're literally... if you believe the polls, we are changing our mind about whether the government is good or not every 2 weeks.
I can say it simply, I don't believe the polls. They're now so ludicrous. I mean, I don't know, this is before, Conroy's outburst today. But I have seen nothing Bill Shorten's done that would warrant this. I think it's more a backlash against the government. They are still giving the feeling of feeling their way. They're making mistakes. They're ideological. I don't think anyone's warming to them. And I think this is more of a reaction and they really have to get their act together. But I think the polls are just so weird and changing so much. I don't put any store in them at the moment.
Truth is, though, Ed, if people high-five the Nielsen result 2 weeks ago, then you've got to cop the Newspoll result. I mean, as I said, to me, it all seems a bit too erratic for a government that is not exactly every 2 days stood up and made some negative decision cutting this benefit and that benefit. But why do you think Newspoll has happened?
You know, I simply have never made a career reading these polls, and during the course of the last parliament, when they were bouncing around, but generally in a very downward direction for us.
Like a slinky.
Yeah, I just didn't, comment on them, and I just think it's too early. As you said, we've still got 3 years and a lot of road to travel. But my big thing is, I think there is no where this government really hurts is a failure to be consistent. People can't tell when they're making decisions, the way in which they're making decisions. They go by the way that they behaved prior to the election, the type of things they said before the election. And as we've often said, this ain't the government that people thought they were voting in. So I think, in part, if I was to, answer your question directly at some point in time, I think in part that's probably got something to do with it.
Well, we eventually get there. Fiona, you were told today, apparently by the Prime Minister, that in all of the MPs, there's going to be some rocky times. There is going to be budget speculation, concerns about it. When that's the base and the boss is telling you rough times ahead, are you nervous about the next little while?
No, I'm not nervous at all. I mean, I ran in the 2010 election, I ran in the 2013 election and was successful. And I think you should always earn the right of the community to represent them. So, like Ed, I'm not going to speculate on what the polls say, but I'll work hard for my community and be out there listening to what the people say to me, their thoughts and feelings.
But okay, when people turn around and say to you, I don't like what Joe Hockey did about this benefit or that benefit or family tax benefit, or somebody comes to you and says, I can't stand the decision that Joe Hockey and the Prime Minister made about negative gearing, whatever it's going to be. I know that obviously people expect that you go and take that message to the people who are higher up in the food chain. But how can you promise the people who voted for you but will be annoyed with what has to happen to pull the joint back into the right space, that they did the right thing by voting for you?
Well, I think we were very clear before the last election where we said we were going to have to take some cuts. There was quite a lot of spending that had happened in the previous government. I mean, there was, we've seen, $123 billion of deficit that we've been left with, heading towards $667 billion of gross debt. So, I mean, these are sort of numbers that we're dealing with, and I don't think the Prime Minister or the Treasurer have minced their words in regard to that.
All right. Now, Ross, I mean, you were there, 96, when a government sweeps its way in and then you've got to make some tough choices along the way. What's your advice, both both for Fiona, who has to ride it out, and Ed, who's going to want to try to ride the wave against it as hard as he can for as long as he can?
Well, I think that Fiona is right, that there is a certain culture shock taking place amongst Australians at the moment who spent 6 years being at first entertained, then distracted, then bored by the problems of the Australian Labor Party, and now they've been confronted by the problems of Australia. And what we see is, a pile of dung worthy of the Augean stables. And we need tremendous resolve on the part of the leadership team to actually confront and address these issues. And I think what I would ask, my real advice is firstly to the Australian people to say, please give your government permission to do the hard job which has been left to them by the Australian Labor Party, because while it will be painful and while we will all feel a sense of insecurity for some months and perhaps even years, now is the moment to tackle these problems, and everyone has got to grab a shovel and start digging out this massive pile of manure.
All right, what a lovely image as we head off to break. In a moment we'll find out what's happening on Sports Night. I also want to talk about Sydney's second airport, because both these guys have different political parties but are in the same part of the Gregories, which is Western Sydney, and what will that mean should there be the second airport. But there are wider issues about this. They go to some national interest. We'll get to that in a second. As well as, please, could people settle down? There is no outrage in a government trying to get rid of a program that wants to treat you like a moron. I'll explain all in a sec.